Morning, Peter. How are you today?
Morning, Peter. I'm great, thank you. Happy Monday to you.
Yes, absolutely. It's beautiful. Well, I hope you enjoyed summer. I think that's it done now.
Yeah, we had our 3 days, didn't
So,
we? Yeah.
Peter, welcome to the Business Spotlight. Thanks very much for taking the time to speak with me today. Could we start? Could you tell me a little about yourself, your background, and your business, please?
Sure. So my name is Peter Corscadden. I'm lucky to be CEO at Oxipit. I'll talk about that in a second. About me, well, look, born in Belfast many years ago, but I've always worked in healthcare IT. In SMEs as well as large global companies. So started my career with Tomcat, which had been Cranbourne Software, and that was cardiology IT, and that was through the Explorers program, which is a university industry partnership initiative. And then over the years, I've worked for, as I said, large companies and small as well. But it's always been in that healthcare IT space, whether in sales, product management, service management. And now, as I said, that's led me to being lucky enough to lead Oxipit. Oxipits are headquartered in Lithuania, in Vilnius, Lithuania, founded in 2017. And we specialize we're an AI first healthcare tech company. So we're providing AI solutions in healthcare space, primarily image analysis and primarily radiology as well.
And so, how would I explain what Oxipit is as a business to my 12-year-old daughter?
If she's a 12-year-old daughter and she's anything like my 14-year-old daughter, just tell her we're really cool and it's not the kind of scary AI that's going to take over the world and replace all our jobs. You could tell her that. But um, if it's someone who wants a little bit more detail, so Oxipit was founded by radiologists and mathematicians. And in 2017, they came together and thought, well, what are the problems we can solve with that skill set that we have? And they very quickly realized that if we could bring autonomous AI into the triaging and reporting of exams, that's the biggest bang for buck in terms of what AI can deliver. So that's what we do. We're very different than most AI in healthcare space today, in image space, in that most AI you see out there and doing fantastic things, don't get me wrong, but they're providing computer assisted diagnosis, so big heat maps on the screen showing the clinician where the pathology, where the diseases are, and helping guide them. So it is improving accuracy of diagnosis. It is improving the speed of diagnosis to an extent. But I think where Oxipit is different, and where we know it's different, is uniquely globally, we have an algorithm or a series of algorithms that, whilst we're scanning for all the disease types that are possible, we're automating the reporting element and the triaging element. So there's zero clicking for that clinician. So, and that's a step change in the approach, and we believe that's the biggest gain we can offer from an AI first company to an industry, radiology, especially imaging, which is beset with a workforce crisis. So that would be the best way, I think, to summarize what we do.
And are there any business leaders that have influenced you along your journey, or that you look up to today at all?
Um, I suppose every leader I've worked with or have seen influence you to an extent, don't they? And you kind of absorb little bits. Um, so by the time you get to my age, you're not yourself anymore. You're actually an amalgam of all this patchwork quilt, some good and some not so good. But I think the most impactful was probably my first, Stephen Gunning. And Stephen Gunning lives locally, and he was the owner and MD of Tomcat. We were Cranbourne Software, but our product, Tomcat, took off. And I think what I learned most from him was this sense of always being on. He never missed an opportunity to promote the company or the product. And I was very young at the time. I joined when I was, I can't even remember, 20, 21. And it was cringy, as your 12-year-old daughter would say. sometimes felt cringy. He was always promoting the company and the product. But when I look back now, you see the passion and the pride in the team that he had built, the product that he was responsible for. So I think he has definitely been the one that's remained throughout, always thinking about, well, what am I doing today? What am I doing right now to promote the company, the business, and the team? So yeah, I would say Stephen Gunning if I had to pick one person, but obviously I think all of them have had some impact along the way.
Yeah, it's a great share. And yeah, I can still recall little snippets that I picked up from people many moons ago that I still quote and use today.
Right.
What would you say has been the best piece of advice you've ever been given, Peter?
Um, well, this is okay, it was business advice, but it applies, I think, across the board in life. I worked for an individual called David Stanaway when I worked for Philips Australia, New Zealand, and David was a very charismatic New Zealand, a proud New Zealander, and his style was on the surface very laid back, so one of these personality types that absorbed and took in and observed a lot. And when he spoke, it was always measured and highly respected by everyone around him. I'm the opposite of that, right? I talk too much, I shoot off the hip, I've so many variances from his style. And he would more than once say to me, what is the problem you're trying to fix? And it was usually something that I was responsible for the business of the healthcare service division within Philips for Australia, New Zealand. And there's always a million and one things to do. But if you boil it right back to what is the problem you're trying to fix? And I find in life as well, if you're pursuing something, whether it's, I don't know, in your personal life, career goals, it's quite often financial based as well. What are you trying to fix? Is it an ego thing? Is it a financial stability thing? Is it a, I don't know, trust thing? I think a lot of things boil down to that question. And to fast forward today with Oxipit, we bring that question to our customers, right? Okay, you want an AI solution. Why? What's so special about AI? What are you trying to fix? And that for me is absolutely the best bit of advice I've got, business wise, but also for many things in life.
Superb. And I've heard people say along over the years that people in Northern Ireland aren't very good at blowing their own trumpet. So we're about to dispel that. Peter, could you tell me what would you say are your three strongest qualities as
Oh,
CEO of Oxipit?
we're good at banging drums. We're not good at blowing trumpets. Um, Look, I think, oh, that's a tricky one. So, right. So I think of all the jobs I've had and all the teams I've worked with, there's definitely a curiosity there, right? There's definitely a sense of, I really want to understand how that thing works. Um, and to the point where I do ask the most ridiculous questions. So, I've been lucky to work for some companies who are right at the bleeding edge of their technology or their solutions, or their culture. So at Philips, the culture was amazing. I wanted to understand, well, why? What's the secret sauce? I want to work for those guys. And with the analytics engines here in Belfast, I worked briefly there. And they are real pioneers in ML and AI and trying to bring that into healthcare, trying to understand that and the patience of my colleagues there and humoring me with some of those answers. So it's that curiosity. It's got to be, and I'm going to take it as a quality, not as an irritant for my colleagues around me. So that would be one. And I think the other one's an obvious one. It's a desire to help or improve. So in every job I've had, in every company I've worked for, there is a genuine desire to improve healthcare or the way we do things. I think if you work in business and then you decide to work in healthcare, there was a manager, I think at Philips, who made the point that if we do well commercially, healthcare is doing well because we're pushing out solutions that are genuinely, world leading. So there's no shame in being commercially successful when you work in healthcare, but you've got that added bonus of knowing that you are actually helping people, and you know, in Oxipit, if we're helping people detect cancers that little bit earlier, we're helping institutions have less missed findings. You know, we're helping them be burned out less. So, you know, there's a genuine sense that you are helping. So that would be, I think, is equality. I presume most people have that, by the way, but I'm going to take it as one of mine. The third one is probably this. I mentioned it briefly a second or two ago about shooting from the hip. I could put that in better parlance, right? Which is I'm quite instinctive. I do tend to go with what I feel is the right decision. So yes, I will always look at as much information as I can, but at the end of the day, it's got to feel right. And you know, my dad used to always talk about common sense in a lot of things, and a lot of it is common sense, but you can get blinded by things that are urgent versus important. Um, but but really getting back to, you know, what needs to be addressed now. So yeah, that would be the third.
Very good. I love that. So curiosity, desire to help or improve, and instinctive common sense. Excellent. Who would be the ideal customer for Oxipit?
I think it doesn't matter if it's Oxipit. When working as a supplier in B2B, it's who's the customer that's going to admit their vulnerability and open up, so there's a trust relationship. What I mean by that is, you know, I've worked in a lot of sales roles, and there's always a defense that quite naturally goes up. When I'm a consumer, I throw that barrier up too. But when you break through that, and you get that wonderful space, which is, you know, the customer opens up and says, look, I've got this particular problem. And in response, you then are also honest and say, well, we can't help you really, not directly, but we know someone who can, or there's something else you might want to consider. And you get into this brilliant space of true collaboration with a customer. And I think that is, you know, I've been lucky enough to have that a few times over my career with different roles where you just click with a customer. And it's because you have that very honest, vulnerable conversation. They've got a problem, and it could be something very sensitive, right? In the clinical world, if things are going wrong, you want a partner who's going to be, you know, respectful of the clinical colleagues working around it, and the need for discretion, and all the rest of it. So, and on the company side, you need to ditch the hubris and realize that you're one of many suppliers, and maybe you don't have a solution, right? So you put the sales hat to one side and focus on the relationship. So that's the ideal customer. Just to link it what we do today at Oxipit, that's crucial. Remember, we're in a new industry, healthcare AI, with a product that's completely unique. So clearly we need that trust in those relationships. So the ideal customer is someone to say, okay, we've told the world we've got this massive problem, crisis of workforce, just aren't enough radiologists to read the volume of x-rays. You say you've got a solution that claims to address it by removing whatever it is, 40% of my work list. Prove it. And the customer that comes to us says, okay, we want you to prove this to us. That's the ideal customer. A customer is open-minded enough to accept their problem and challenge us about our solution. So it's that quid pro quo kind of relationship. Definitely. That sounds a bit Hallmark, but no disrespect to Hallmark cards. Other cards are available, but you know what I mean. I do think there's a lot in that trust relationship.
Good. Well, hopefully you'll be hearing a lot of people saying "prove it" over the coming months and
Yes,
years.
yes, bring it on.
If we fast forward 5 years, so 2029, what
Yeah.
does Oxipit look like then?
Um, well, again, I've two. I split that answer into two. One is where I want the industry to be, and where Oxipit is in that. So I I believe strongly this technology needs to be adopted. Whether it's Oxipit or someone else who comes up with something half as good. This ability to automate the triaging process, so you're not wasting time going through, you know, 60-70% of the work list, which is normal studies, right? Let's get clinicians focused on the complex studies. Let's make sure they're not missing findings because they're burned out and overworked. So that's where the industry needs to be in 5 years. Otherwise, we're all in trouble. where Oxipit fits into that. Hopefully, all of the imaging providers adopt our technology into their solutions. And we're not just chest X-rays. We've also got products for CT and MSK, which is the musculoskeletal. So we're bringing this autonomous process to lots of different areas of imaging. So hopefully then Oxipit will be able to partner with organizations who want to join us on that journey. So quite a bit bigger as well in terms of footprints. As I say, we're headquartered in Lithuania. When we get FDA later this year, we'll want to establish it in the US as well. We've already got a customer there. So we want to build upon that and have a much bigger footprint ourselves.
I know it's sometimes easy when you're outside of the industry to think that delays and waiting lists and so on are solely NHS. So is this a global issue that Oxipit is able to fix?
Yeah, 100%. It's globally there's just simply because the growth in radiologists just is growing by 3% on average per year globally. The volume of studies that need to be read is growing 15, 20, 30% annually. So clearly it's a problem today and it's getting worse. So it's not just in the UK and Ireland where there's a defined problem. It's well reported. The Royal College of Radiologists have been sounding the alarm bell for quite a few years now. But globally, we talk about equity of access to care. And, whilst we have a shortage, there are plenty of regions and plenty of countries where there just aren't radiologists to do that read. So access to healthcare, and we look at chest X-rays kind of as a cornerstone of a lot of imaging, and a lot of care pathways start with a chest X-ray. If you don't have anyone to read those chest X-rays, obviously your whole healthcare suffers as a result. Let alone screening programs. There's plenty of countries in the world where a TB screening program, for example, would be hugely beneficial. What's the point in having the drugs? What's the point in having equipment if you don't have people to do the actual exams and interpret those exams? So yes, globally, this is a massive problem. There are some countries where, you can count the number of radiologists in the low dozens of numbers for the whole country. So yes, it's a global problem to various extents. But so for so-called developed markets, you would say, well, there's a shortage, there's inefficiencies, there's burnout, people are missing findings completely, or there is not a safe or equitable service. But there's other countries where they just can't offer a service. So that's clearly not fair, right, on any level. So there is definitely a global phenomenon of workforce shortage here.
And Peter, could you share, are there any podcasts that you listen to that you'd like to share, or indeed a favorite book at all that you'd like to share?
Yes, don't have one. So nothing to do with business, nothing to do with healthcare. Podcast? So podcast, yeah, In Our Time. So Sir Melvin Bragg does In Our Time every Thursday morning, Radio 4. It's on summer repeat at the minute. Go to the BBC websites. If you want to learn anything, and maybe this is the curiosity thing, right? If you want to learn anything about anyone, that's the go-to place. You've 45, 50 minutes of anything from the history of electricity to Chopin, right? It's amazing. It's an amazing eclectic mix, and you're lost in that world for nearly an hour of just learning something that your brain normally wouldn't have been exposed to. In terms of book, I suppose Joseph Conrad. I was a big reader in my teenage years, and I suppose Joseph Conrad would have been a big favorite. And I think that was because that was in my early teen years. That was like a revelation that books can be quite meaty, and there's quite a lot going on. This is quite adult in theme, right? And The Secret Agent, if you ever get a chance, it's not Heart of Darkness. It's one of his other books, but for me that was a big eye opener. It was, there was intrigue, there was social panic, there was terrorism, there was all kinds of subterfuge going on between countries, very similar to today. And so that was the first book that really opened my eyes to actually books can be really quite adult and meaty. So yeah, that was still probably my favorite book. When I think of the time when I first really enjoyed a novel, it was Secret Agent, Joseph Conrad. Yeah.
And if it were possible and you could go back and dish out some advice to your 18-year-old self, what would that sound like?
Well, he wouldn't have listened, so what's the point? But assuming he would listen, um, well, okay, sorry, two answers, right? One is just enjoy it, just enjoy it, um, and take enjoyment in everything in life, in your family, in your friends, in your work, in the world around you. But the second one is ask. You know, when I think back to that age, and you know, when you look back now and you see hard decisions are made, especially in large organizations. You know, and I laugh, you know, you read conspiracy theories about big government and big this and big that. If you work for a big organization, you see the haphazard nature of decision making. But if someone comes along, no matter what age they are, and just ask, can I do this? I've got this really, I want to try this. Can just ask. That would be the second bit of advice. And don't, you know, you're just as valuable and all the rest of it as anybody else in that room, provided you've done your homework and you know it, you know, and you've got some ideas behind it. Just ask. But yeah, definitely the first one. Enjoy it as you're going through. I think it's probably the
Good
best.
stuff.
Having said
And
that, the
if
18-year-old me
somebody
would have listened to the older me, that's for sure.
and if somebody likes what they've heard, Peter, would like to reach out or get in touch with Oxipit or yourself, what would be the best way for them to go about that?
Well, just Peter at Oxipit. That's OXIPIT.ai. Or find me on LinkedIn. There's not many Peter Corscaddens in the world. So if you look for Peter Corscadden on LinkedIn, you'll probably find me in all my aged glory.
Superb. Well, Peter Corscadden from Oxipit, thanks very much for taking the time to speak with me today. It sounds like an amazing product and AI with how it can fix things as opposed to how it's got a darker element to it. So yeah, like it sounds brilliant. I wish you all the success for the remainder of 2024 and beyond, Peter. So thanks very much indeed.
Well, Peter Magee from Action Coach. Pleasure talking to you. Best of luck.